Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the research vessel Endeavour, watching the stars drift past the main viewing window. The ship had been traveling through unexplored space for 3 weeks now, far beyond the edge of human territory. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and took another sip of his coffee. The liquid was cold and bitter, but it helped him stay alert during the long night shift. "Captain, you need to see this," called Dr. Lisa Chen from her station at the science console. Her voice carried an excitement that made Jake turn around immediately. Lisa was not the type to get worked up over nothing. In the 5 years she had served as the ship's xenobiologist, Jake had learned to pay attention when she sounded like this. Jake walked over to where Lisa was studying her readings. The screen showed waves of energy signatures unlike anything he had seen before. The patterns were massive and complex, stretching across several star systems. "What am I looking at, Doc?" "Energy. Readings from the Kepler 442 system," Lisa explained, pointing at the data. "But these are not natural phenomena. The patterns are too organized, too purposeful. Something is generating these signals, and whatever it is, it's huge." Marcus Thompson looked up from the security station where he had been monitoring ship defenses. The big man had served in the Earth Defense Corps before joining the Endeavour crew, and his military training made him naturally suspicious of unknown energy sources. "Could be a trap," he said. "Pirates sometimes use fake distress signals to lure ships into ambushes." Emma Rodriguez spun around in her chair at the communications console. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and her brown eyes showed the same curiosity that Jake was feeling. "I'm not picking up any distress signals," she said. "Actually, I'm not picking up any communications at all. Whatever is out there, it's not trying to talk to anyone." Jake studied the energy readings again. The patterns were beautiful in their complexity, like nothing he had ever seen in 20 years of space exploration. "How far are we from the source?" 2 days at maximum warp," Lisa answered. "The signals are coming from the 4th planet in the system. It's about the same size as Earth, with a breathable atmosphere and normal gravity." "Sounds too good to be true," Marcus muttered. But Jake could see the curiosity in his eyes too. They were all scientists and explorers at heart, drawn to mysteries like this one. Jake made his decision. "Set course for Kepler 442, but we approach carefully. I want full scans running before we get within weapons range of anything." The next 2 days passed slowly. The closer they got to the mysterious planet, the stronger the energy readings became. Lisa spent most of her time analyzing the data, trying to understand what they were approaching. Emma monitored every communication frequency, hoping to intercept some kind of message. Marcus checked and rechecked the ship's weapons and shields. When they finally reached the outer edge of the Kepler 442 system, Jake ordered the ship to drop out of warp at a safe distance. The planet hung before them like a blue-green jewel, covered in swirling white clouds. It looked peaceful and normal from space, nothing like the source of the strange energy they had been tracking. "Beginning orbital scans," Lisa announced. She worked quietly for several minutes, her face growing more confused with each reading. "Captain, this doesn't make sense. The energy signatures are definitely coming from the planet's surface, but I'm also picking up massive life signs." "What kind of life signs?" Jake asked. "Big ones, really big ones. And there are hundreds of them scattered across the planet." Lisa turned to face him, her expression puzzled. "But here's the strange part. These creatures should not be able to exist on the same world." Emma leaned forward in her chair. "What do you mean?" Lisa pulled up a series of biological scans on the main screen. "I'm reading genetic markers from species that come from completely different parts of the galaxy. Look at this. Crystalline hunters from the Vega system. They're pack predators that can grow to the size of small buildings. And over here, acid-spitting leviathans from the Centauri colonies. These things are designed to dissolve anything they touch." Marcus stood up from his station and walked over to study the readings. "Those are some nasty customers. The Earth Defense Corps has files on both species. They're classified as extreme threats to human colonies." "That's not even the strangest part," Lisa continued. "I'm also detecting shadow stalkers from the Rigel Nebula and what looks like stone giants from the asteroid mining regions. Every single one of these species is an apex predator in their home system." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Apex predators were the creatures that sat at the top of their food chains, the hunters that nothing else dared to hunt. They were territorial, aggressive, and deadly. The idea of so many different apex predators existing on the same planet was impossible. "Run the scans again," Jake ordered. "There has to be some kind of error." Lisa worked at her console for another 10 minutes, running every diagnostic she could think of. When she finished, her expression was even more confused than before. "No error, Captain. I'm reading over 300 different apex predator species on that planet. They're all alive, all active, and they're all just sitting there." "What do you mean sitting there?" Emma asked. "They're not hunting. They're not fighting. Some of them are actually resting near each other. I've got readings showing a pack of crystalline hunters less than a mile away from a family of stone giants. In any normal situation, they would be trying to kill each other." Jake stared at the planet below them. In all his years of exploration, he had never encountered anything like this. Apex predators from across the galaxy, gathered together on a single world, apparently living in peace. It was impossible, but the evidence was right there on the scanner. "Emma, any luck with communications?" he asked. "Nothing, Captain. Complete radio silence from the surface. But I am picking up something else." Emma adjusted her controls and put the signal through the ship's speakers. A low, rhythmic sound filled the bridge like the breathing of some enormous creature. "That's not breathing," Lisa said suddenly. "It's a heartbeat. Multiple heartbeats, actually. They're synchronized." The sound continued for several minutes, hundreds of massive hearts beating in perfect rhythm. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the sound stopped. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. These were good people, trained professionals who had followed him through dangerous situations before. But this was different. This was something that challenged everything they thought they knew about how life worked in the galaxy. "We go down and take a look," Jake decided. "But we do this smart. Full environmental suits, armed escort, and we stay close to the shuttle. If things go bad, we get out fast." Marcus nodded approvingly. "I'll prep the landing party gear. Lisa, I want continuous scans of everything down there. If so much as a blade of grass moves wrong, I want to know about it. Emma, keep monitoring all frequencies. If anyone tries to communicate with us, I want to hear it immediately." As his crew prepared for the landing mission, Jake continued to stare at the mysterious planet below. Something had brought together the most dangerous predators in the galaxy and convinced them to live in peace. He had a feeling that discovering what that something was would change everything they thought they knew about life in the universe. The question that worried him most was simple. If these apex predators had come here seeking refuge, what exactly were they hiding from? The shuttle landed on a flat plain covered with strange purple grass. Jake Morrison stepped out first, his environmental suit beeping softly as it analyzed the air. Behind him, Marcus Thompson emerged with a plasma rifle in his hands, scanning the horizon for threats. Dr. Lisa Chen followed with her portable scanner, and Emma Rodriguez carried the communication equipment. The first thing Jake noticed was the silence. Despite the massive life forms his ship had detected from orbit, the landing site felt eerily quiet. No bird songs, no insect buzzing, no sounds of movement through the grass. Even the wind seemed muted, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. "Air is breathable," Lisa announced, checking her readings. "Oxygen levels are actually higher than Earth normal. Temperature is comfortable. This place should be full of life, but I'm not detecting any small animals or insects." Marcus kept his weapon ready as they moved away from the shuttle. "Where are all those big predators you detected?" "About 2 miles north," Lisa replied, pointing toward a line of distant hills. "The readings are incredible. I count at least 50 different species in that direction alone." They set up their temporary base camp next to the shuttle using portable equipment to create a communication link with the Endeavor. Emma established the connection and immediately began monitoring galactic communication channels for any news about the creatures they had found. "Jake, you need to hear this," Emma called out after working at her console for an hour. She had removed her helmet since the air was safe, and her face looked worried. I'm picking up reports from all over the galaxy. Apex predators are disappearing. From their homeworlds. Jake walked over to listen as Emma played back the intercepted messages. The reports came from mining stations, research outposts, and colony worlds across dozens of star systems. The stories were all similar. Dangerous predators that had terrorized regions for generations were simply vanishing overnight. The shadow stalkers that hunt in the Rigel system, Emma read from one report. The entire population just left their hunting grounds 3 weeks ago. No bodies found, no signs of fighting, they just disappeared. Another message talked about crystalline hunters abandoning their crystal caves on Vega Prime. A third described acid-spitting leviathans leaving the toxic swamps of Centauri IV. Each report mentioned the same timeline. The disappearances had started about a month ago and were spreading across the galaxy. Lisa looked up from her scanner. These creatures didn't disappear, they came here. The question is why. Maybe we should go find out, Marcus suggested, checking his equipment. Those hills aren't too far. We could reach them before dark. Jake nodded. We go together and we go carefully. If we see anything that looks dangerous, we retreat immediately. The team packed their gear and began walking north across the purple grassland. As they traveled, Lisa's scanner showed more and more life signs ahead of them. The readings were massive, indicating creatures the size of buildings moving around, beyond the hills. After an hour of walking, they reached the top of the first hill and looked down into the valley below. What they saw made them all stop and stare in amazement. The valley was filled with the most incredible collection of alien life forms any human had ever witnessed. Crystalline hunters moved like living glass sculptures, their transparent bodies refracting sunlight into rainbow patterns. Each one was the size of a small house, with razor-sharp crystal formations growing from their backs and limbs. In any normal situation, they would be hunting everything around them. Instead, they were resting peacefully in the grass. Nearby, acid-spitting leviathans dozed in the shade of some strange trees. These creatures looked like enormous slugs covered in poisonous spines, but they showed no signs of aggression. Their acid sacs were deflated, and their defensive spines lay flat against their bodies. Shadow stalkers flickered in and out of visibility at the edge of the valley. These creatures were nearly impossible to see directly, appearing as shifting patches of darkness that moved independently of any light source. They were known to drive entire populations insane with fear before moving in for the kill. Here they seemed to be standing guard, watching the approaches to the valley. The most impressive sight was a group of stone giants resting near a small stream. These creatures were living mountains, 40 feet tall and covered in rocky armor that could deflect starship weapons. Their eyes glowed like molten lava, but their expressions seemed peaceful, almost sad. This is impossible, Marcus whispered. These species should be tearing each other apart. Lisa was frantically recording everything with her scanner. Look at the behavioral patterns. They've organized themselves into groups, but not by species. Each group has representatives from different worlds, different evolutionary backgrounds. Jake studied the scene more carefully and realized Lisa was right. The groups were mixed with predators from different star systems resting together as if they were old friends. More importantly, the larger and more dangerous creatures seemed to be positioned protectively around smaller ones. They're not just coexisting, Jake said. They're taking care of each other. Emma had set up her communication equipment on the hilltop and was monitoring multiple channels simultaneously. Jake, I'm getting more reports. The disappearances are accelerating. Entire species of apex predators are abandoning their territories and heading toward unknown destinations. Heading here, Lisa added, looking at her readings. I'm detecting new arrivals on the other side of the planet. Whatever brought these creatures together, it's still calling to others. As they watched, a new group of creatures emerged from the forest on the far side of the valley. These were hunters Jake had never seen before, with sleek metallic bodies and multiple sets of claws. They moved with the grace of natural killers, but as soon as they entered the valley, their aggressive posture changed. The other predators welcomed them without conflict. There's something else, Emma said, adjusting her equipment. I'm picking up structured signals from the planet's surface. Not communications exactly, but organized patterns of energy. Jake turned to look at her. What kind of patterns? They're coming from underground. Deep underground. It's like there's some kind of massive structure buried beneath this entire region. Marcus raised his weapon as something large moved in the grass below them. A crystalline hunter had noticed their presence and was approaching the hill. Its faceted body caught the sunlight and threw brilliant reflections in all directions. Should we run? Marcus asked. Wait, Lisa said, studying her scanner. Look at its body language. It's not attacking. It's curious. The crystalline hunter stopped at the base of the hill and tilted its massive head upward, studying the humans with eyes that looked like cut diamonds. It made a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, then turned and walked back toward the other creatures. It's trying to communicate, Emma realized. That sound pattern, it's repeated in the underground signals I've been detecting. Jake felt a chill run through him. These creatures aren't just refugees, they're organized. Something has brought them here and taught them to work together. But what? Marcus asked. And why? As if in answer to his question, Emma's communication equipment suddenly came alive with emergency broadcasts from across the galaxy. Her face went pale as she listened to the incoming messages. Jake, you need to hear this. There are reports coming in from the Outer Rim territories. Entire star systems are going dark. No communications, no energy signatures, nothing. It's like they're just disappearing. Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. The creatures in the valley, look at them. Jake looked down and saw that every predator in the valley had stopped what they were doing. They were all facing the same direction toward the eastern horizon, and their postures showed clear signs of fear. These were creatures that nothing in the galaxy dared to hunt, and something had them terrified. A low sound began to echo across the valley, starting with the stone giants and picked up by every other creature. It was a warning call, a sound of fear and desperation that spoke to something primal in Jake's mind. Whatever drove these creatures here, Jake said quietly, I think it's coming. Emma's equipment crackled with more emergency transmissions, each one reporting the same thing. Something was moving through the galaxy, leaving empty star systems in its wake. And based on the direction the creatures were facing, it was heading straight for them. Jake looked at his team and made a decision that would change everything. We're not leaving. We're going to find out what's underground, and we're going to figure out why these creatures think this is the only safe place in the galaxy. The warning calls continued to echo across the valley as the sun began to set, and Jake realized they might have stumbled into the middle of the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. Jake Morrison led his team down into the valley as the sun set behind the distant mountains. The apex predators watched them approach but made no aggressive moves. Instead, they seemed to recognize that the humans were different from anything else they had encountered. A massive stone giant lowered its head as they passed, and Jake could see ancient intelligence in its glowing eyes. The creature gestured with one enormous arm toward a cave entrance that had been hidden behind a cluster of crystalline formations. It wants us to go in there, Lisa said, checking her scanner. I'm reading artificial structures deep underground. The energy signatures are incredible. Marcus kept his weapon ready but followed Jake toward the cave entrance. I don't like going underground when we don't know what's down there. The creatures are showing us the way, Emma observed. They want us to find something. The cave entrance was larger than it had appeared from a distance. As they entered, lights began to activate automatically along the walls, revealing a tunnel that had been carved with precision tools. The walls were covered with symbols and markings that looked ancient but somehow familiar. These markings? Lisa said, running her scanner over the wall. They're not from any known galactic civilization, but the mathematical patterns are universal. Whoever built this understood advanced physics and engineering. They followed the tunnel deeper into the planet. The lights continued to activate, ahead of them, as if the ancient system was guiding them toward something important. After walking for nearly an hour, they emerged into a vast underground chamber that took their breath away. The chamber was filled with floating holographic displays showing star maps, biological data, and historical records spanning millions of years. In the center of the room stood a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with soft blue light. This is a library, Emma realized, looking at the organized displays of information. Someone built this to preserve knowledge. Jake approached one of the floating displays and found that it responded to his presence. Images began to flow across the holographic surface, showing the history of galactic life over countless centuries. He saw the rise and fall of civilizations, the evolution of different species, and the complex relationships between predators and prey across thousands of worlds. "Look at this," Lisa called from another display. She had found biological records of every apex predator species they had encountered in the valley above. These files contain detailed information about creatures from all over the galaxy. But look at the dates. Jake joined her and saw that the records went back much further than any known galactic history. The files showed cycles of predator behavior that repeated every 50,000 years, with each cycle ending in the same way: the sudden disappearance of apex predators across the galaxy. "It's happened before," Jake said, understanding beginning to dawn on him. Many times. Marcus had found a display showing tactical information about something called the Devourers. The images were disturbing, shadow-like entities that seemed to absorb light and matter around them. These things, they're what the predators are running from. Emma was studying communication records from previous cycles. The Devourers don't just kill apex predators, they drain something from them, some essential quality that makes them what they are. The records call it predatory essence. Jake moved to the central crystalline structure and placed his hand on its surface. Immediately, the entire chamber filled with new displays showing the current galactic situation. The images were terrifying, entire star systems going dark as the Devourers moved through them, leaving behind empty worlds with no signs of life. "They consume the ability to hunt," Lisa said, reading from the biological data. "When they're finished with an apex predator, the creature becomes completely docile. It can't hunt, can't defend itself, can't survive. It just fades away." The display showed the Devourers' current path through the galaxy. They were systematically working their way through each star system, targeting the most dangerous predators. First, the timeline showed they would reach human space within weeks. "But the predators here are safe," Emma pointed out. "Something about this planet protects them." Jake studied the defensive systems shown in the displays. The planet was surrounded by technology that could hide its energy signature and mask the presence of the creatures living there. But the defenses were failing. The power levels shown in the ancient systems were dropping steadily. The builders of this place knew the Devourers would return, Jake realized. They built this sanctuary to preserve apex predators through the cycle. But they never expected this many refugees. Marcus was studying tactical displays showing previous encounters with the Devourers. Every species that tried to fight them failed. The Devourers are immune to conventional weapons and can phase through most defensive barriers. "Look at this," Lisa said, pointing to a biological analysis display. "The Devourers can only detect and target creatures that fit specific predatory patterns. They hunt by sensing hunting behavior, territorial instincts, and aggressive responses." Jake studied the predatory pattern analysis and felt a cold realization wash over him. Every species in the galaxy fell into clearly defined categories: apex predators, lesser predators, or prey species. Every species except one. "Emma, run a scan." "On us," Jake ordered. "I want to see how we show up on the Devourers' detection systems." Emma used the ancient scanning equipment to analyze the human team. The results were startling. Where every other species showed clear predatory or prey classifications, humans appeared as an anomaly. Their predatory behavior was cultural and technological rather than biological, creating a pattern the Devourers couldn't recognize. "We're invisible to them," Marcus said, understanding the implications. "They can't see us because we don't fit their understanding of how predators work." The ancient records confirmed their theory. The builders of the sanctuary had possessed the same immunity, but they had made a fatal mistake. In trying to enhance their natural abilities to become better protectors, They had altered their biology enough to become visible to the devourers again. That's why the defenses are failing, Jake realized. The builders are gone, consumed by the very entities they were trying to hide from. The sanctuary has been running on automatic systems for thousands of years. New displays activated, showing the current positions of devourer forces. They were closer than anyone had realized, already probing the outer edges of the star system. The refugees in the valley above sensed their approach, which explained the fear Jake's team had witnessed. The predators aren't just hiding here, Emma said, studying communication logs between the different species. They're sharing information, working together to find a solution. Some of these creatures have been mortal enemies for millions of years, but now they're cooperating. Lisa found records of the experiments the refugee predators had been conducting. They were trying to modify their own biology to become invisible to the devourers, but every attempt had failed. The changes required were too fundamental to achieve, without losing their essential nature. They need our help, Jake said, looking around at his team. We're the only species the devourers can't detect. We could coordinate their defenses, help them fight back. Marcus studied the tactical displays showing devourer weaknesses. These things have never faced organized resistance before. Every previous cycle, the apex predators fought alone and lost. But if we could unite them, coordinate their attacks? The question is whether they'll trust us, Emma said. Some of these creatures have been enemies of humanity in the past. Crystalline, hunters have attacked our colonies. Shadow stalkers have terrorized our outposts. Jake looked at the displays showing the approaching devourer forces. Time was running out. The entities would reach the planet within days, and when they did, every apex predator in the galaxy would be defenseless against them. There's something else, Lisa said, pointing to a section of the records they hadn't examined yet. The devourers aren't just random destroyers. They're part of a galactic cycle, a natural process that's supposed to maintain balance. But something has gone wrong. With the current cycle, the record showed that in previous cycles, the devourers had left some apex predators alive to repopulate their worlds after the cleansing was complete. This time, they were consuming everything, leaving nothing behind. The cycle is broken, Jake said, understanding the full scope of the crisis. If we don't stop them here, there won't be any apex predators left in the galaxy. The entire ecosystem will collapse. Emma received an urgent transmission from the Endeavor. Captain Morrison's ship was detecting massive energy signatures approaching the star system. The devourers had arrived ahead of schedule. Jake looked at his team and made the decision that would define humanity's role in galactic history. We're not running. We're going to teach these predators how to fight together, and we're going to show the devourers that there's one species in the galaxy they never learned how to hunt. The ancient chamber pulsed with energy as Jake activated the sanctuary's emergency protocols. Above them, hundreds of apex predators felt the call to gather for the fight of their lives, guided by the one species the cosmos had never been able to categorize. The first devourer scout arrived at dawn, appearing in the valley like a living shadow that seemed to absorb light from everything around it. Jake Morrison watched from the ancient underground chamber as the creature moved among the apex predators, completely ignoring their presence. It can't see them, Lisa said, monitoring the scanning displays. The sanctuary's defenses are still partially active. The predators are masked. But Jake could see the terror in the creatures above. Even though the devourer couldn't detect them, the apex predators knew death was walking among them. Crystalline hunters dimmed their natural light. Stone giants became perfectly still. Shadow stalkers faded completely from view. We need to test something, Jake said, making a decision that could cost him his life. I'm going up there. Jake, no, Emma protested. We don't know what those things can do to humans. That's exactly what we need to find out, Jake replied, checking his sidearm. If we're going to help these creatures, we need to understand how the devourers see us. Marcus stood up, grabbing his rifle. If you're going up there, I'm going with you. Jake shook his head. One person is less likely to be noticed. Besides, if something happens to me, you'll need to get the others back to the ship. Jake climbed, back through the tunnel system, emerging into the early morning light of the valley. The devourer was about 100 yards away, moving slowly through the gathered predators. Up close, it was even more disturbing than the ancient records had suggested. The creature was roughly humanoid in shape, but seemed to be made of living darkness. It had no solid edges, instead flowing and shifting like smoke given form. Where it moved, the grass beneath its feet turned gray and brittle. The air around it shimmered with unnatural cold. Jake began walking directly toward the entity, his heart pounding but his steps steady. Around him, the apex predators watched in amazement as the small human approached the thing they all feared most. The devourer continued its patrol pattern, scanning the area with senses Jake couldn't understand. When Jake came within 50 feet of the creature, it paused and seemed to look in his direction. Jake froze, expecting to feel the draining effect the ancient records had described. Nothing happened. The devourer tilted its shadowy head, as if confused by something it couldn't quite perceive. Then it simply continued on its patrol route, moving away from Jake as if he didn't exist. Jake felt a surge of excitement mixed with relief. The theory was correct. Humans were completely invisible to the devourer's detection systems. He was standing in plain sight of the most dangerous entity in galactic history, and it couldn't see him. He activated his communicator. "Lisa, are you monitoring this?" Every second of it, her voice crackled back. "The devourer's scanning beams are passing right through you. From its perspective, you're not even there." Jake began moving closer to some of the apex predators, testing whether his presence could extend protection to them. A group of crystalline hunters watched him approach with obvious hope in their diamond-like eyes. "Jake, be careful," Marcus warned over the comm. "We don't know if physical contact will change anything." Jake reached out slowly and placed his hand on the nearest crystalline hunter. The creature's surface felt smooth and warm, like polished glass in sunlight. Immediately, Lisa's voice came over the communicator with excitement. "The masking effect is extending to the hunter. Whatever makes you invisible to the devourer, it's transferring through physical contact." Jake moved among the predators, touching as many as he could reach safely. Each contact seemed to strengthen the protective effect. The creatures began to lose their fear, understanding that the human could somehow shield them from detection. The devourer completed its patrol and departed, vanishing into the shadows between dimensions. Jake felt the tension leave his body as the immediate threat passed, but he knew this was only the beginning. Back in the underground chamber, the team worked frantically to understand what they had discovered. The ancient scanning equipment confirmed that Jake's biological signature had somehow interfered with the devourer's ability to perceive the creatures he had touched. "It's not just immunity," Lisa explained, studying the data. "Humans have an active masking effect. Our presence disrupts the devourer's scanning patterns." Emma was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. "The reports are getting worse. Entire sectors are going dark. But Jake, look at this." She showed him a message from the outer colonies. "Human settlements that were attacked by the devourers are reporting something strange. The entities attacked everything except the humans, then left without completing their usual feeding patterns. They're confused by us," Jake realized. "We don't fit their understanding of how life works. They can't classify us as predators or prey, so they just ignore us." Marcus was studying tactical displays from the ancient database. "If we can extend this protection to other species, we could coordinate a resistance. The devourers have never faced organized opposition before." "But it's more than just protection," Lisa said, pointing to biological readings. "Look at what happened to the predators Jake touched. Their stress hormones decreased. Their territorial instincts became more flexible. Human contact isn't just hiding them from the devourers, it's helping them work together." Jake understood the implications. Throughout galactic history, apex predators had been solitary hunters or members of single-species packs. But human influence was allowing them to transcend their basic nature and cooperate across species lines. "We're not just invisible to the devourers," Jake said. "We're the key to changing how predators think and act. We can teach them to be something they've never been before." Emma received an urgent message from the Endeavor. Captain Morrison's ship had detected massive devourer Forces massing at the edge of the star system. The main invasion force would arrive within hours. We need to get back to the surface, Jake said. If we're going to organize these creatures, we need to do it now. They climbed back to the valley, where hundreds of apex predators were gathering from across the planet. The ancient sanctuary's emergency protocols had called every refugee to this location, creating the largest assembly of apex predators in galactic history. Jake stood on a rocky outcropping overlooking the vast gathering. Stone giants towered 40 feet above the ground. Crystalline hunters reflected sunlight in brilliant patterns. Shadow stalkers flickered in and out of visibility. Acid-spitting leviathans rested their massive bulk on the purple grass. All of them were looking at him. They're waiting for orders, Marcus said, checking his equipment. These creatures have never followed another species before, but they're ready to follow us. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The fate of every apex predator in the galaxy was in his hands. More than that, the fate of the entire galactic ecosystem depended on what happened in the next few hours. Lisa, Emma, I need you to establish communication with as many species as possible. Marcus, help me organize them into combat groups. We're going to do something that's never been attempted before. What's that? Emma asked. Jake looked out at the assembled predators, creatures that had terrorized civilizations across the galaxy, now looking to humanity for leadership and protection. We're going to teach the greatest hunters in the galaxy how to hunt together. And then we're going to show the devourers what happens when the prey decides to fight back. Above them, the sky began to darken as massive shapes blocked out the sun. The devourer invasion force had arrived, and the final battle for the soul of the galaxy was about to begin. But for the first time in galactic history, the apex predators would not face extinction alone. They had humanity on their side, and that was about to change everything. The sky above the valley turned black as the main devourer force descended toward the planet. Jake Morrison stood among hundreds of apex predators, watching as their ancient enemy prepared to eliminate them once and for all. But this time would be different. Emma, are you getting communications from all the groups? Jake asked, checking his equipment. Affirmative, Emma replied from her position near the ancient communication array they had set up. I've got contact with crystalline hunters, stone, giants, shadow stalkers, and 43 other apex species. They're all waiting for your orders. Jake had spent the last hour organizing the predators into mixed species combat teams, something that should have been impossible. Natural enemies were working together, sharing hunting strategies and coordinating their abilities under human guidance. Lisa, what's the status on the masking effect? Jake called to the xenobiologist. It's working better than expected, Lisa answered, monitoring her scanners. Every predator you've made physical contact with is extending the protection to others of their species. The effect is spreading like a network. Marcus checked his weapons and surveyed the defensive positions they had established. I count over 50 devourer entities descending toward our position. They're moving in formation, which means they're organized and intelligent. Jake activated his communicator to address all the predator groups simultaneously. Emma had worked with the ancient translation systems to convert his words into sounds and patterns each species could understand. Listen to me, all of you, Jake began, his voice carrying across multiple communication frequencies. For millions of years, your species have faced the devourers alone and lost. Today, we fight together. Today, we show these entities that the galaxy has evolved beyond their understanding. The response was immediate. Crystalline hunters chimed their agreement in harmonic frequencies. Stone giants rumbled their approval with sounds like distant thunder. Shadow stalkers flickered in patterns that conveyed determination and unity. The first devourer touched down at the edge of the valley, and Jake felt every predator around him tense with instinctive fear. The entity was larger than the scout they had encountered earlier, its shadowy form rippling with dark energy. Team 1, begin the diversion, Jake ordered. A group of shadow stalkers immediately vanished from sight, using their natural abilities to approach the devourer from multiple angles. Under normal circumstances, they would have attacked individually and been quickly consumed. Instead, they moved in perfect coordination, creating overlapping fields of invisibility that confused the entity's scanning systems. The Devourer paused, clearly puzzled by the organized approach. It had never encountered prey that worked together in such complex patterns. Team 2, execute flanking maneuver, Jake commanded. Crystalline hunters emerged from concealed positions on both sides of the valley, their bodies blazing with reflected sunlight. But instead of charging directly at the Devourer, they moved in precise formations that Marcus had adapted from human military tactics. The Devourer tried to focus on the crystalline hunters, but the Shadowstalkers continued their coordinated harassment, preventing the entity from concentrating its draining abilities on any single target. Now Team 3, Jake called. A group of stone giants rose from positions where they had been camouflaged as natural rock formations. Their massive forms created a barrier that forced the Devourer into a killing zone where other predators waited in ambush. This is incredible, Lisa said, watching her scanners. The Devourer can't adapt to these tactics. It's designed to hunt individual predators, not coordinated groups. More Devourers began landing in the valley, but Jake was ready for them. He had positioned teams throughout the area, each one containing predators from different species with complementary abilities. Emma, coordinate the communication between teams. I want constant updates on Devourer positions and movements. Already, on it, Emma replied, managing dozens of communication channels simultaneously. The predators are sharing information faster than ever before. They're learning from each encounter. Jake watched as his unconventional army engaged the Devourers across the valley. Acid-spitting leviathans provided covering fire while crystalline hunters closed for melee attacks. Shadowstalkers served as scouts and saboteurs, disrupting Devourer formations. Stone giants held defensive positions and served as mobile fortresses for smaller predators. But the most important element was Jake himself. He moved constantly between the combat teams, maintaining physical contact with key predators to keep the masking effect active. Wherever he went, the Devourers seemed unable to effectively target the creatures around him. Marcus, take Team 4 and hit those Devourers approaching from the east, Jake ordered, pointing toward a group of entities trying to flank their position. Marcus led a mixed group of predators toward the eastern edge of the valley. The sight of a human coordinating apex predators in combat would have been unthinkable just days earlier, but now it seemed natural. The battle raged for hours, with neither side gaining a clear advantage. The Devourers were individually more powerful than any single predator, but they couldn't adapt to the coordinated tactics Jake's forces were using. Jake, look at this, Lisa called, showing him readings from her scanner. The Devourers are actually retreating in some areas. They're confused by encounters they can't understand or predict. Jake felt a surge of hope, but he knew the battle was far from over. Emma, what's the status of our reinforcements? The Endeavor is in position with defensive systems online. Captain Morrison reports that more apex predators are arriving from other parts of the galaxy. Word is spreading that there's finally a place to make a stand. As if summoned by Emma's words, new creatures began emerging from the forests around the valley. These were apex predators that had traveled from distant star systems, drawn by reports of organized resistance against the Devourers. Jake quickly integrated the newcomers into his combat teams, explaining the tactics through Emma's translation network. Each species brought unique abilities that added to the overall effectiveness of the coordinated force. A massive Devourer, larger than any they had faced, descended toward the center of the valley. This entity seemed different from the others, more intelligent and focused. Jake realized they were facing a Devourer commander. All teams converge on the central target, Jake ordered. This is their leader. If we can defeat it, the others might retreat. Every predator in the valley turned toward the massive Devourer commander, but instead of charging in a disorganized mob, they moved in the coordinated patterns Jake had taught them. Shadowstalkers created concealment fields. Crystalline hunters provided mobile firepower. Stone giants formed defensive barriers. Acid spitters laid down suppressing fire. And in the center of it all, Jake coordinated the entire assault through physical contact and Emma's communication network. The Devourer commander tried to use its draining abilities, but the coordinated attack prevented it from focusing on any single target long enough to be effective. Every time it turned toward one group of predators, another team attacked from a different angle. It's working, Marcus reported over the comm. The commander is taking damage, Its form is becoming less stable. Jake could see the entity beginning to flicker and lose coherence. The Devourer commander was designed to hunt individual predators, not to face the combined might of dozens of species working in perfect harmony. "Final assault," Jake ordered. "All teams now." The entire valley erupted in coordinated violence, as hundreds of apex predators launched a simultaneous attack on the Devourer commander. The entity tried to retreat, but shadow stalkers had cut off its escape routes. It tried to drain the attacking predators, but the masking effect Jake provided made it impossible to target them effectively. With a sound like reality tearing apart, the Devourer commander collapsed into nothingness. The moment it died, every other Devourer in the valley began to retreat, fleeing back toward space. The apex predators filled the valley with roars, chimes, and rumbles of victory. For the first time in galactic history, they had defeated the Devourers in open combat. But Jake knew this was only the beginning. "Emma, send a message to every communication frequency in the galaxy. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that the Devourers can be beaten, and tell them how." As the sun set over the valley, Jake looked around at the incredible collection of apex predators that had become his army. They were no longer refugees hiding from an unstoppable threat. They were the foundation of a new galactic order, one where cooperation could triumph over any enemy. The Devourers would return, but they would find a galaxy that was no longer helpless against them. They would find apex predators that had learned to work together under human guidance, creating a force that could protect every world in known space. The great hunt had begun, but this time, the Devourers would be the prey. 3 months after the battle in the valley, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Endeavor as it approached Earth orbit. The ship was different now, modified with technology from dozens of alien species. In the cargo bays, representatives from 47 apex predator species traveled as the first members of what would become known as the Galactic Apex Council. "Incoming transmission from Earth Defense Command," Emma Rodriguez announced from her expanded communication station. The equipment now included translation systems for every known apex predator language, making Emma the galaxy's first multi-species communications coordinator. Jake accepted the transmission, and Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the main screen. Her expression showed a mixture of amazement and concern. "Captain Morrison, your reports are hard to believe. You're telling us that humanity has become the leaders of an alliance of the galaxy's most dangerous predators?" "Not leaders, Admiral," Jake corrected. "Coordinators. These species are still apex predators, but they've learned to work together for mutual protection and shared goals. We're the bridge between species that would normally be enemies." Behind Jake, Dr. Lisa Chen worked at a science station that had been expanded to accommodate her new role as head of xenobiological cooperation research. She had spent the last 3 months studying how human contact affected apex predator behavior, documenting changes that were revolutionary in their implications. "The transformation is permanent," Lisa reported to the Admiral. "Apex predators that have worked with humans maintain their new cooperative abilities even when separated from us. We've fundamentally changed how they interact with other species." Marcus Thompson coordinated security from a station that now monitored not just the Endeavor, but the positions of apex predator fleets throughout human space. His new title was Director of Interspecies Defense, and he commanded the respective creatures that had once terrorized human colonies. "Admiral, you need to understand the scope of what's happening," Marcus said. "The Devourers are regrouping in the Outer Rim, but they're facing organized resistance for the first time in galactic history. Every apex predator species is sharing information and coordinating attacks." Admiral Chen studied the data flowing across her screen. "What about Earth? Are we safe from these predators now that they're organized?" Jake smiled, understanding her concern. "Admiral, Earth is now the most protected world in the galaxy. The apex predators see humanity as their essential partners. Any threat to Earth is a threat to the entire alliance." The transmission ended, and Jake turned to address the apex predator representatives who had gathered on the bridge. A crystalline hunter named Clearsong spoke in musical tones that Emma translated immediately. "Clearsong asks about the status of the defense fleet," Emma reported. The crystalline hunters have positioned themselves around the Sol system to provide early warning against any devourer incursions. Tell Clearsong that we appreciate their protection, Jake replied, and remind them that human colonies will provide the same support for crystalline hunter worlds. A massive stone giant called Mountain Root rumbled a question that shook the deck plates. Emma listened to the translation equipment and nodded. Mountain Root wants to know about the new training centers. The stone giants are eager to learn more human tactical methods. Marcus will coordinate with them, Jake said. We're establishing training facilities on 12 different worlds, where apex predators can learn advanced cooperation techniques. The bridge fell quiet as a shadow stalker materialized near the communication station. These creatures still made Jake's team nervous, but they had proven to be invaluable allies. Emma listened to patterns of light and darkness that served as the shadow stalker's language. Night Hunter reports successful raids on 3 devourer staging areas. Emma translated. The shadow stalkers have been using human stealth tactics to disrupt enemy operations before they can begin. Jake felt pride in what they had accomplished, but he knew the real work was just beginning. The devourers were still out there, adapting to the new reality of organized resistance. More importantly, the entire galaxy needed to understand that the age of isolated predator species was over. Emma, open a channel to all apex predator fleets, Jake ordered. It's time for the first official council meeting. Emma worked at her expanded communication array, establishing connections with apex predator representatives throughout the galaxy. The technology was a fusion of human engineering and alien innovations, capable of translating between dozens of completely different communication methods. All council members are connected, Emma reported. Jake looked around at the representatives on his bridge and activated the communication system. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Defense Corps, speaking to the first meeting of the OI Galactic Apex Council. We gather not as separate species competing for territory, but as partners working toward shared survival and prosperity. The response came in waves of sound, light, and electromagnetic patterns as dozens of apex predator species acknowledged his words. Emma's translation systems converted everything into understandable formats. The crystalline hunters report successful. Establishment of cooperative hunting grounds with the acid spitters on Vega 7th, Emma translated. Traditional enemies are now working together to maintain ecosystem balance. Stone giants and shadow stalkers have formed joint patrol units in the Rigel system, came another report. They're providing protection for smaller predator species against devourer reconnaissance. Jake listened as report after report confirmed the same thing. Apex predators across the galaxy were abandoning their old territorial behaviors and creating a new form of civilization based on cooperation and mutual support. Lisa, give us the scientific analysis, Jake requested. Lisa activated her displays, showing biological and behavioral data from across the galaxy. The changes are spreading beyond direct human contact, she reported. Apex predators are teaching cooperative behaviors to their offspring and to other members of their species. We're witnessing evolutionary adaptation in real time. What does that mean for the long term? Asked Admiral Chen, who had reconnected to monitor the council meeting. It means the galaxy has fundamentally changed, Jake answered. The old predator-prey relationships that governed galactic ecology for millions of years are being replaced by cooperative networks. Species that used to compete are now protecting each other. Marcus added his tactical perspective. The devourers are facing coordinated resistance on every front. They're being forced to retreat to the outer rim, and even there they're under constant attack by apex predator fleets using human-developed strategies. But the most important change isn't military, Jake continued. It's cultural. Apex predators are no longer isolated hunters. They're becoming parts of larger communities, sharing knowledge and resources across species boundaries. Emma received a priority communication from the Outer Rim territories. Report from the crystal hunters in the Andromeda approach. They've made contact with refugee predator fleets from outside our galaxy. The devourer problem isn't limited to the Milky Way. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders again. The scope of the crisis was even larger than they had imagined, but so was the scope of the solution they had discovered. Then we expand the alliance, Jake decided. Every apex predator in the local galactic group needs to know that cooperation is possible and that humanity can help coordinate their efforts. The council meeting continued for hours as representatives from across the galaxy shared information and coordinated their efforts. When it finally ended, Jake found himself standing alone on the bridge, looking out at the stars. Emma joined him at the viewing window. Hard to believe how much has changed in just a few months. The galaxy was ready for this, Jake replied. The apex predators were already starting to cooperate when we found them. We just showed them how to do it more effectively. Marcus and Lisa joined them at the window. They had all been changed by their experiences, evolving from a simple exploration crew into the founders of a new galactic order. What happens now? Lisa asked. Jake considered the question. The Devourers were still out there, but they were no longer the unstoppable force they had been for millions of years. More importantly, the galaxy had learned that cooperation was possible between any species, no matter how different their nature. Now we keep exploring, Jake said. There are still apex predator species we haven't contacted, still worlds that need protection, still devourer forces to defeat, but we're not doing it alone anymore. He gestured toward the displays showing apex predator fleets positioned throughout human space. Crystalline hunters provided early warning systems. Stone giants served as mobile fortresses. Shadow stalkers conducted reconnaissance missions. Acid-spitting leviathans had become living weapons platforms that could take positions impossible for traditional ships. The galaxy has learned something the Devourers never expected, Jake continued. That predators can choose to become protectors, that hunters can choose to become guardians, and that the strongest force in the universe isn't individual power, but the decision to stand together. Emma smiled, looking at the communication logs showing messages from across the galaxy. The reports keep coming in. Apex predator species that haven't cooperated in millions of years are forming permanent alliances. They're establishing joint colonies, sharing hunting grounds, even interbreeding in some cases. The Devourers created their own downfall, Marcus observed. By threatening every apex predator in the galaxy, they forced them to overcome their natural competition and work together. They turned their greatest strength into our greatest advantage. Lisa pulled up biological data showing the long-term projections for the new galactic ecosystem. If these trends continue, we could be looking at the emergence of a truly stable galactic civilization. Apex predators working as protectors rather than threats, smaller species developing under their protection, resources shared instead of fought over. Jake nodded, but his expression remained thoughtful. There's still work to do. The Devourers won't give up easily, and there are probably other threats out there we haven't discovered yet. But for the first time in galactic history, we're not facing them alone. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Emma checked her console and looked surprised. It's from the deep space monitoring stations. They're detecting new energy signatures in the Andromeda galaxy. The patterns match Devourer technology, but they're different somehow. Different how? Jake asked. More organized, more intelligent. If I didn't know better, I'd say the Devourers are evolving too, adapting to the resistance they're facing. Jake looked around at his team, the people who had started this revolution in galactic politics. They had proven that cooperation could triumph over competition, that guidance could be more powerful than domination. Now they would have to prove that these lessons could survive even greater challenges. Then we keep learning, keep adapting, keep growing, Jake said. We've shown the galaxy that change is possible. Now we show them that it's permanent. He activated the ship-wide communication system, addressing not just his human crew, but the apex predator representatives throughout the vessel. This is, Captain Morrison. Set course for the Andromeda approach. We have new allies to meet and new challenges to face. But we face them together, as we always will from now on. As the Endeavor changed course toward the edge of known space, Jake watched the stars shift in the viewing window. Behind them, the galaxy was transforming into something unprecedented in galactic history. Ahead of them lay unknown dangers and unimaginable possibilities. But they would meet both as partners, predators and humans working together to write a new chapter in the story of galactic civilization. The age of isolated hunting was over. The age of cooperative protection had begun, and at the center of it all, humanity had found its true calling. Not as conquerors of the galaxy, but as the species that taught the galaxy how to conquer its own nature.